Yeah.
2 weeks from now, Minecraft comes out. Goodbye, Snow White. Snow White's going to have a disadvantage there. The issue here is that we've got roughly 2 weeks before the bulk of people get their Easter/spring break. And by that point, that's when Minecraft is coming in. I don't think there's this same kind of, oh, let's go check it out, goodwill of Mufasa. I'm not seeing it.
Renegade Online.
All right, so Odin, I know you did a video on this too today. So where's your thoughts box office wise? We've been kind of dancing around a lot tonight because we've had a lot of different guests in here. But your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at this as analytically as I possibly can. And when it comes down to it, most films tend to make about a third of their box office globally in their opening weekend. And I've been covering this now for a long time. And if you look at the average release on a typical release from any global release, usually you get about 3 times your opening weekend by the end of your run on average. Obviously, films can do a lot worse. Films can do a lot better. So if we assume that for this one, it's still not looking all that good, right? Because we're still talking about like what, 250-ish million in total sales. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is by comparing it to the other film that has been brought up, which is of course Mufasa, because some said, well, Mufasa legged out. Mufasa had a worse domestic opening weekend, though it did a heck of a lot better internationally. And so, hey, maybe that's a sign that something could potentially happen there. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to use Mufasa, then let's just look and see, okay, where, basically how far apart was Mufasa's global opening to what we had currently going on with this new iteration here, right? And it's about a 30% difference. It's like, okay, if we just bring that to its logical conclusion then, and then say there's a still 30% difference between the two films, between Mufasa and Snow White, well, guess what? That means the film gets to $490 million worldwide. Now, again, I don't think that is necessarily going to be where it lands, but yeah, the fact is that if you're looking at a $250 to $490 million like range as far as where the film likely will end up based off of some decent metrics to look at, it's a failure. And that's just even using the budget that they have given us. I'm actually surprised that they've been honest enough this time around to say $270 million budget, even though that in and of itself is not necessarily the final budget on the movie.
Well, remember, Disney wasn't honest about that. That wasn't Disney's number. That was the Caroline Reed "we got your ass" number, because she pulled that. And to remind folks, that is the number that is only up through December 31st of 2023. So like we talked about earlier in the show, Odin, we said, okay, unless we all want to pretend that Disney did literally nothing with this film, it sat and collected dust for the last 15 months. I think we're pretty safe in saying that budget is going up tremendously. And especially when we consider everything that we saw in this movie, where it's like, oh, this definitely looked like 2, if not 3 movies that were just squashed together, and this is a mess. And the bandits, that image from the UK Daily Mail in July of 23, that was real. And it looked like 90% of their footage hit the cutting room floor. And then they put in the dwarves. We're looking at a movie that probably is going to have a gross budget of somewhere close to $400 million. If you strap in an appropriate amount of additional film tax credits, including what's already been done so far, we're looking at probably a net production cost of somewhere around, in my opinion, $320 is where my brain is right now. $320 million. Slap in easily another $100 million, even if Disney pulled back on this like we heard they did with Dial of Destiny back in the summer of 2023. We're still at $400+ million of all-in costs. This is a boondoggle. Man, this is bad. This is really bad.
Yeah.
So,
and by honest, I was specifically not mentioning Disney there, but rather the trades. The fact that the trades, which have been running with the $180 million budget, right, saying, well,
for Captain Falcon,
for Captain Falcon, it's only made it only cost $180 million to make. It's like the fact that they're even running with the Caroline Reed number, and that seems to be like, hey, if they're running with that to me says that Disney is not pushing back on that. And they're like just saying, all right, go ahead and run with that. Because as you mentioned, they probably know, hey, yeah, it's better than what it actually cost.
It's going way up. I can't wait. Caroline and I have both been watching the UK reporting. We're waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I would tell people right now, again, be patient, because I suspect. Now, the thing with these UK filings, one thing I've observed is that they have the capacity to alter their own chosen reporting periods. So, for example, my point is the next report that comes out, there's a 99% chance it's still not going to be everything. We're probably still going to be waiting at least a year from now, if not a little bit longer, to see the final tax filing that they will turn in. Because, again, we are March of 2025. The last report we have right now is through the end of 23. We haven't even gotten the end of 24's report. They might cut it off in August of 24 for all we know. They can chop their reporting periods up. They have a little bit of freedom there with how it's not like a tax return here in the U.S. This is a special filing that they make to collect film tax credits from UK taxpayers and from the British government. So it doesn't work quite the same way. There are still little tiny bits and drabs that are being reported for The Rise of Skywalker from 2019. There are still little tax returns or little financial returns coming in for, $1 million or something like that here and there. So the point is that the bulk of it should be done in the next 12 to 18 months, but we're still a ways out. We're still a ways out, but we're watching it because I can't wait to see this because it's nightmare fuel, man. It's total nightmare fuel.
And to those that are trying to say, oh, could it possibly just barely eke out to the Marvels standard? The other big thing to keep in mind with that, too, is with the Marvels, it was appealing towards that, the MCU demographic, which show up opening weekend and then pretty much disappear after that, right? That's just kind of always been the standard. And so even though you could easily say, that's interesting that the Marvel's global opening was $108 million. Yeah. So it actually did a lot better than what even this film's doing. The difference is that Snow White's audience is the families. It is those audiences that can stretch out a release much longer. Again, Mufasa's a great example of that. And really a lot of the Disney releases that are those like more family, like Elemental, great example too. That one also legged out better than people would have expected, right?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I mean, it didn't do great. It didn't make money, right? But it was one where it's like, oh, okay, this film opened and this is where it should have ended up, but it ended up doing a lot better. So, still not a great open, still not a great overall box office run. But yeah, those family audiences, I tell you, man, they do come out, and do not put down the chance of those moms and their daughters coming out to see this film for a long time. I don't think the film's any good. I honestly would say the best comparison, and I mentioned this in my video earlier today, is with Dumbo, right? And that's the film that they're kind of putting it up against, even though Dumbo had a better domestic opening.
It's pretty scary, honestly.
It's pretty scary, right? And it's like that film already was seen as probably one of the few like total bombs in the live action remake sphere of Disney, because even Aladdin and all these others that were terrible still did really good at numbers at the box office. But I mentioned that because Dumbo had a lot of, as I like to say, stank on it. Right. And a lot of stank on it because the family audiences were like, we don't want our kids going to this. This looks really dark. They're like, this movie looks scary for our kids, and we don't want to expose our kids to that. And sure enough, they didn't show up. I think that Snow White has a very similar feel to it, where people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to expose my kids to this. This doesn't really feel like family entertainment. This doesn't seem like the story that I grew up with really enjoying. So that it's going to be interesting to see exactly that battle between the standard family audience that shows up to almost anything, but then also those families that are a lot more self-aware and are going to be like, oh, I'm going to keep my kids away from this one.
The crazy thing is, if you adjust for inflation, Dumbo beat by $12 million.
A lot, yeah. And that's what's scary. And the other thing, and I don't know if you caught this early, we brought this up. You've got the biggest problem for Snow White is that unlike Mufasa and some of these other movies that had a chance to leg, like Mufasa had a chance to leg, but it had the advantage of legging with 4, 5, 6 weeks of continued use of PLFs. Yeah. 2 weeks from now, Minecraft comes out. Goodbye, Snow White, because Universal or who's making Minecraft, is it Universal or Paramount or Sony? I can't remember right now. Whoever's got it, they've got the PLFs when it comes out. So Snow White's going to have a disadvantage there, and I think that's going to play into it. But the word of mouth, like Mufasa seemed to be to where the movie wasn't offensive, it wasn't horrid, it was just something that people originally, okay, it's Mufasa, but then word of mouth kind of got out. It was Christmas break, it was New Year's break, and people just continued to stretch over that time, like you said. The issue here is that Snow White, it's like we've got roughly 2 weeks before the bulk of people get their Easter/spring break out there in the U.S. And by that point, that's when Minecraft is coming in and wipes out the PLFs for Snow White. I don't think there's this same kind of oh, let's go check it out. Goodwill of Mufasa. I'm not seeing it.
No.
I mean,
here's a thought. The Marvels beat it in terms of first weekend openings. What if this performs like the Marvels? I mean, there is that possibility. I don't think it's likely, but it could.
It could.
And then, oh my gosh, the loss is insane.
Yeah.
It could bomb out, and that's why I said, Disney's looking at, as scary as this is to say, they're looking at losses on par with the Marvels. We're looking probably conservatively somewhere around a $200 million mark for this because of what this movie, I firmly believe, based on the existing data, the financial returns, and what, and I had another conversation with Caroline today, what we're kind of expecting to see come down the pike with Hidden Heart when they finish reporting this. It's not going to get any prettier. And even if we conservatively estimate $100 million marketing budget, and for the people out there wondering, let me put it this way. The Super Bowl commercial that Disney put out there for Captain Falcon and Snow White, all those Super Bowl commercials they had on there were $8 million a pop. That's what they went for. The big event that they did at the Spanish Castle, whatever, a week or two before the movie opened, they probably spent another $4 to $5 million putting together that. Because guess what? I've got clients that I manage a lot of money for that do the physical production of what Disney kind of puts together for these red carpet events. Like they do the lighting and the sound and everything else. I believe me, I know what these guys charge to do these things, and that might be lowballing it. The big events that they do in Los Angeles, these red carpet events, they're spending millions and millions of dollars on that. If you just take those three things right there, the big world premiere in Spain, the big world premiere doing a big red carpet event where they're handing out very expensive gifts to a lot of these people showing up, even though they weren't allowed to interview the stars, and you talk about an $8 million Super Bowl commercials, that alone right there, you're probably talking about $15 million of a marketing budget. Right there, without buying one other commercial, without buying a Google ad, without buying a Twitter ad, an Instagram ad, nothing else. And you talk about this and you start stretching that out on a global scale. It is very expensive to do these big headline movies these days.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.